The Eagles have won, and yet the city unsatisfied. Another week, another referendum on Nick Sirianni. We've got Zach Berman in studio to talk about it next on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast, a Victory Monday. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman here to talk about the 3-2 Eagles, the world-beating Philadelphia Eagles. You know, with a celebration like that, Zach, you can imagine this is a team primed to go on a Super Bowl run. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited for the show. Look forward to these Monday day after shows for you. You said that they won. I didn't realize there was an actual game yesterday because none of the conversation today has been about the game, which could be problematic, or I don't know about problematic, could be illustrative of what happened.
Well, let's get into it. Let's just dive right on in there, Zach, because it does feel a little bit exhausting, right? Every week of this season feels like it has been a referendum on Nick Sirianni. Does he deserve to be fired? What does he really do here? All this stuff. And yet, it's hard to get away from it after yesterday's game. All the histrionics, the post-game press conference, after a game that, frankly, was not that impressive. Certainly not a chest-pounding, yell-at-the-fans type performance. How are you feeling a day after? You had a chance to sleep on it. You were in that room yesterday with Nick and his kids. How are you feeling a day later?
Well, there's so many ways to go here. You can go with the kids. You can go with the chirping. You can go with the comments. There's a lot of different things, and we'll get into all of it. But to kind of, I guess, put it all together, what strikes me is that the conversation today, whether it's here, and I think we have a good show that's even, that's measured, and we put thought into what we're going to discuss. And you couldn't do a show today about that game without talking about Nick Sirianni. Talk radio, columns, everywhere you look, the conversation is about Nick Sirianni. And I made that tongue-in-cheek quip about the game yesterday because, like, I don't get why Nick would create a situation where that is the story, right? If they got blown out and then he kind of, it's like, look over here at this, so you don't talk about how bad the team's playing. All right, like, sometimes there's design to it. I don't think there was any design to that.
Or even
yesterday.
if it was a game worth celebrating like that.
But like, there should, your $100+ million wide receiver looked awesome. This defense, which had been maligned, did not allow the Browns to score a touchdown. I know a bad Browns offense, but like that is a game where you can hang your hat on the defense's performance. Brandon Graham had his 200th game, right? There's so many different directions. Your quarterback did not turn the ball over. Like, there's so many things about that game that could be the dominant conversation
So
today.
many things about that game that were not ordinary. You know what I mean? Because this show is presented by our friends at Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Back to you.
And rightfully so, like, deservedly so. I wrote this in my post-game piece on allphly.com that the questions in that post-game press conference were about him chirping at the crowd. Like, he brought that onto himself. This is year 4. He knows the cameras are on him. So I keep going back to this. What is the upside? When you do these things, what is the upside? What are you trying to achieve? And I understand authenticity, and I don't like, you have to let your personality show, but there's also there's decorum that comes with every job.
And that's also ascribing intentionality when, that seems like a guy who's just snapped.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't think he's yelling at the fans to send a message, right? I think he's yelling at the fans because he's lost his mind.
Well, and so for full disclosure, I spoke to listener and friend Scott O, who was in the crowd in the section where Nick directed his anger, and now Scott was not participating in that, but from what I gather, these fans were relentless. They were on Nick all game to the point that like it affected the viewing experience of those around the fans.
Yeah, I don't think there's very little doubt that this was probably a situation where nobody was coming out looking good. Yeah.
That said, you're the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, right? You just won a football game. What are you trying to achieve? You got these or however many fans in the stands. Let's say 2-3 fans who are screaming at you, fire Nick, so on. So, what are you achieving going over there? And we talked about this a few years ago after the Colts game, the Frank Reich situation. I get it. I wouldn't have done it, but I get it. That was emotionally charged. Last year in Kansas City, I wouldn't have poked the bear, but I get it. Like you team that beat you in the Super Bowl. This is a game coming off the bye week that you didn't even play that well.
Yeah.
Right? And
it was not a good game.
And I understand there's a lot of pressure on Nick, but pressure is a privilege. This comes with being the head coach, and how you deal with it matters. And what I keep going back to, and again, like if you watch this show this year, since we started on September 12th a year ago, if you've watched us going back since Nick was hired, I know Nick. I'm not like best friends with him, but I know him. I like him. I admit that. I think there's more to him than sometimes gets ascribed. You know, I kind of push back on like the high school Harry designation sometimes because I think there's more there. But I also think that you have to say, I have to be clear-minded about this too. And I look at this and I say, what if one of his players acted that way? Like, how would he respond?
The whole post-game press, the messaging in the locker room, hungry and humble, hungry and humble,
Yes.
hungry and humble. I'm sorry, humble? What is humble about pounding your chest and yelling at the fans after eking out a 4-point win against a terrible Browns team?
Exactly.
What is humble about that?
Yeah, and you talk about you talk to your team about not letting outside noise affect you. This is literally letting outside noise affect you. Like this isn't figurative outside noise. This is noise right there that you're letting affect you. And so I don't. So if you would, how would he answer the question if I don't know C.J. Gardner-Johnson or you pick up. I just pick C.J. Gardner-Johnson because he's animated, but pick anyone. If they're going to the crowd and doing that, right? What's he saying?
Yeah,
and so that's
he's also, by the way, doing it. This was not a one-off thing. He's doing it to the Browns corners in the first quarter, like on the second possession of the game,
that
stepping out onto the field.
Yeah,
just having fun.
That part, that's no. I think that falls more into the Brandon Graham. What Brandon Graham said after the game is that he told him he wants 2022 Nick back. That's 2022 Nick. Like there's that swagger that he has.
You're gonna buy Shane Steichen a plane ticket?
Well, we can get to the offense, but yeah. So the context there, of course, and I hope you watched the post-game show. If you didn't, go back and watch it. Bo, Fran, Jamie, Vinny did an awesome job. Bernie did a great. Brennan did a great job producing. And so it was. But I said there, and you heard Nick Sirianni say that players said to him during the bye week that they want Nick to get back to how he was. And we talked about this throughout the offseason. One of the messages from Jeffrey Lurie was about sideline decorum and that maybe Nick overcorrected in this area and he wasn't himself perhaps. And that there was this, during the bye week, there was this idea that be Nick. And perhaps Nick felt the pressure of his job. And he said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it my way. And I'm going to be myself. And because if you're going to go down being you, right? So there's something to be said about that. But then there's a line that you don't cross, and you don't scream at your fans. Like, what are you?
It's kind of crazy.
What are you trying to accomplish? Like, yeah, as I'm saying it, it sounds ridiculous. So that's what I don't get. Now we can get into because for full disclosure, I didn't think the kids at the press conference were that big a deal, but what I do think, I thought that him screaming at the fans, there's no upside to doing that. And I think the fact that it's become a story, and I'll also say this, because the person Nick answers to is Jeffrey Lurie, right? Nick doesn't answer to you or me. Nick doesn't answer to the fan base. Nick answers to Jeffrey Lurie. So in essence, there's an audience of one whose opinion really matters here. And so you might be saying, what's Jeffrey Lurie thinking here, right? I don't know what Jeffrey Lurie's thinking, but I do know
I
this
have
about
some thoughts, but
yeah, I do know this about Jeffrey Lurie. Okay, I don't think Jeffrey Lurie is as moved by the fan sentiment as one might think. Like if you know, or the media, the local media sentiment. Like if you and me are saying something about the team, or Howie, or Nick, or Jalen, or if they're talking about it on WIP or the Fanatic or the Philadelphia Inquirer, like I don't think Jeffrey's as influenced by that. But I'm fairly confident Jeffrey cares quite a bit about how the team is viewed in league circles, whether it's prominent national media or within the league, what other owners are saying, what other executives are saying. And if Nick Sirianni's viewed or the organization's viewed as almost like a circus act, for lack of a better term, then I think Jeffrey would care about that. And so I can't imagine Jeffrey watched that yesterday, and he's hearing this discourse and this national discourse today, and it's like, that's my coach, right? Like I think it's like, come on, Nick. Now Nick might say, Jeffrey, you told me. That Jeffrey did not like some of these sideline antics in the past, specifically how it might affect the referees, because he thinks there's an advantage there. But there's also a perception here, and I can't imagine what the storyline is today is especially welcoming to Jeffrey.
A couple good super chats on the topic. First from Fresh Prince, who says, didn't Nick try to calm down Jalen Carter at the end of the Saints game? It's a bit of a double standard. I think that's honestly a pretty good point.
Very good point.
And then from Default Ben Harris, who says, girlfriend said I need to be better cleaning up. Weeks later, I pick up a crumb, throw it away, then pound my chest and yell at her for doubting me. It's a pretty good comparison as well.
What's up, Ben? It's good seeing Ben up there.
I think there are there are two tracks here. There is like the psychology of it all.
Yep.
And then there's the football of it all. I think let's stick in the psychology where we're not really qualified
yes,
first.
Exactly. Let's be amateur psychologists.
And then we'll get to the football after the ad break.
Yes.
But on the I am sympathetic. Okay? Like I imagine that this is probably a very tense, difficult
100%.
time for the Sirianni family,
Yeah.
right? Like the entire city is always talking about him every week. I'm sure that the kids, like the ones who are old enough, are probably having like a tough time at school, right? Like I'm sure there are like any school, kids are like giving him a hard time. I'm sure the wife is having a tough time. He talked about it the other day, right? So that's all very hard. I imagine that all of this stuff is boiling up. And so, like, on the one hand, you know what? You want to bring the kids out on the press conference, it's fine. I don't think that in a vacuum it is objectionable. It is a little bit of a disconnect with 15 minutes ago, you're on the field like a rabid animal yelling at the fans, and you know that you're going to get tough questions. I don't think that he is purposefully bringing the kids out so that he's not going to get tough questions. I don't think that there's that intentionality to it. But, like, the disconnect, it's like, I don't know, you bring your kids to a bar because you want to like get to hang out with them too, and then you get in a bar fight, and then like 5 minutes later you're just walking out hand in hand like nothing happened. Like, what are we doing here? And then like it's to the point where I know that the haircut is like kind of a jokey thing,
Yeah.
but like in the middle of the bye week when it's supposed to be this like sobering time of like we can clear-eyed evaluate everything that's going on, like at the end of the week he's just like shaving his head off and like some weird Britney Spears episode to the point where like not as a joke, I'm getting texts from people in the building or familiar with Nick. Like, I'm worried about the guy. I don't know that he's okay. Like, I don't know if he's going to make it through the season.
Well, you mean like with his job or just like
mental health wise?
Yeah. Like that's I could say heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? There's a component to that. We'll get to the kid part in a moment. Like I just want to address the psychology of it, which I agree. I'm not qualified to discuss, but I play an amateur psychologist on the PHLY Eagles show, right? I'll say this about Nick. Like Nick likes being liked. Like he's a now there is like the instigator part of it, but he's an amicable, like he's an outgoing people person. And part of his appeal, he talks about connection. Like part of his appeal is that it must be hard being as I didn't want to say
lightning rod.
Yeah, he's okay being scrutinized. Like he gets that part of the job. But there's really been a lot of distaste for Nick this year in particular. It's become personal in some cases, and he as much as these guys say, you put your blinders on, you don't listen to outside noise. Like you can't ignore it. It's there, and it's not just the PR staff prepping him for press conferences, right? It's like you said, he's a father, he's a husband, he's got he's a brother, he's a son. Like when the reality is this, when you're the head coach of an NFL team, but especially a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, everyone has an opinion, and you're bound to hear that opinion, right? And so, yeah, I imagine he's under intense scrutiny. Number one, as it is, but this year in particular, and there's the pressure of coaching for his job. Like he knows the terms of this year, right? It's not like a media generated thing. He knows he needs to win. They started off 2-2. There's conversations about the job. Like if I can't imagine, I read every comment. If every comment was about like you need to do well on the show or you're gonna lose your job, like that would be like that would wear on you.
Probably
right?
a good reason not to read the comments.
That would wear on you. But then if people are telling my wife all the time, like Zach's second segment today, he really did not do a good job there. I don't think he should be doing this job next year. Like, and then my wife says, "Do you think you're not going to be doing this job next year?" Like, this is a very real thing, right?
Sure.
There's real human emotion. So I hear what you're saying with the psychology of it. I don't know if Nick's unwell or well. I in my encounters with him, he's been good. Like, I chatted with him for the Doug Nussmeier story 2 weeks ago. I thought he was normal Nick. We have some time with him. I thought earlier this year he was a little lighter. I thought there was some tense moments, maybe, in the middle after the Atlanta game, that kind of thing. But I haven't found him to be unwell. That said, I think that there was a moment yesterday after that game when clearly hearing these people throughout the game get on him, that he felt a need to say that, and that's where, who's his Nick Sirianni, like how Nick Sirianni and Big Dom are holding Jalen Carter back, and Clinton Hurd are holding Jalen Carter back. Like, who's telling Nick,
I think it's Dom.
Turn around.
Like,
then he should, turn around, because like, what are you trying to achieve by doing that?
Another super chat from CDP, Chase Daniel Plainview, who says, "Is Sirianni the sin eater? Is it better for the Eagles if Stephen A. and the like are discussing Nick going sicko mode than discussing the franchise QB going 0-5 to start the game? Love the program." We've talked about how like this particular setup seemed destined to fail, maybe strong, but like put Nick in the spotlight by design. Maybe that was kind of part of the design by Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, that they know that by setting it up this way, Nick is going to always be the focus and like distract from the first round picks not living up to hype and all that stuff. But I don't think they saw it going quite this way.
Well, yeah, and look, there is sometimes like method to Nick's. I don't want to say madness because that's the wrong term here, but yeah, there are times when he specifically wants to fall on the sword for his guys not to take it. Right? I don't think
sometimes performatively.
Sure.
Like, yeah.
I don't think yesterday was him doing that to take the attention away. Like, I don't think he screamed at the fans so people wouldn't be talking about Jalen starting 0-5, right? I actually think that the discourse about the team today would have been, I think, fairly positive, right? They didn't look that great, but they needed to win. A.J. Brown looked awesome. DeVonta Smith, there's things to pick apart like there isn't in any game, but They won the game.
I think you were more impressed with that performance than I was.
I wasn't impressed with the performance, but they didn't lose. Is my point, right? Like they didn't.
Well,
You're trying. They didn't lose.
They lost relative to the expectations of the game.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those games that you win, but there's stuff to talk about, right? It's that. But I don't think that would have been like this really hot button, light up the phone lines game yesterday. It would have just been. They need to play better, but they got the win. Now they go play the Giants. I don't understand the benefit of all the conversation being about Nick Sirianni. And by the way, if people in the team building are watching this right now, this isn't media generated. Like your coach brought this upon himself. It's not, oh, these guys are always talking about no, we're not trying to, this isn't hot takes or anything. This is the Nick Sirianni brought this upon himself.
Well, I also think it goes to like this for better or worse, like this is sort of who Nick is, right? And it doesn't mean that he was a bad hire. Obviously not. He took him to the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean that he's not a good coach. I just think we have sort of talked about he has such a up and down frenetic personality that it probably is not a thing that is built to last. You know, he is not the Andy Reid steady hand, like clearest head in the room. Like that's not who he is. And probably this is always a thing that was going to burn out at some point, you know, burn bright and then leave. I don't know.
And there are coaches, you know, people always talk about Jim Harbaugh that way, right? He's a great coach. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the NFL, but that there's an expiration date. And maybe that's the case with Nick. I don't know that to be the case. Again, they're 5 games into the season. The schedule looks pretty soft.
It's exhausting, right?
I watched that game last night, the Giants-Bengals game. I get the Eagles aren't world beaters, but there's a world where the Eagles are 6-3, right? Or I'm sorry, 5-2. And yeah, so
you want to make a bet that they're not 5-2?
I mean, they're probably at the very least 4-3. I don't think they're 3-4.
I think they're more likely to be 3-4 than 5-2.
Well, I don't know how we make that bet more likely to be. Well, yeah. Well, I guess we can ascribe odds or assign odds here. Yeah. Something to think about. I think they're more likely to be 5-2 than 3-4.
Okay. Well, maybe we disagree on the floor of this Eagles team, which we'll talk about in a second. Because with Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee for the best flooring in the game. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So, of course, it's like the NFL, baby. They got copycats. But those copycats cannot beat Empire Today when it comes to quality, service, speed. So they're going to advertise low-quality products that simply would not be carried at Empire Today, way beneath their standards. Empire Today won't promise the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home they wouldn't put in theirs. Empire Today keeps shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is just as important as what they put in. Empire Today's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount when you use the promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details.
You got a problem around your house? This is the time of year when you want to make sure your everything's working right. And if there's a leaky pipe with an air conditioning issue or HVAC issue, the faucet that you say you'd fix last fall and it's already this fall, the place to turn is Ace Hardware Home Services. They're around the block with everything you need to fix it, including the person doing the fixing. They have a person for that. It's like a hardware version of Big Dom. We got because now they're not just the helpful hardware folks, it's also the helpful home service and repair folks. From plumbing to heating and cooling, we've got the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, we're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love, from the store now to your front door. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project.
We got a nice watch party coming up on Sunday in Media, Pennsylvania. No, not the town named after Zach Berman's job, but the local one here in Philadelphia. You can come check out the game with us. $10 gets you a free Miller Lite. I mean, I guess $10 free, but you get that. You're getting that, and you get entered into the raffle, including tickets to the Eagles Commanders game and very cool memorabilia, 1 o'clock at State Street Pub. Come and hang out with us. And we've also got a super chat. Zach from Khalif. I want you to answer this one. Imagine you are Nick's PR advisor. How do you salvage his image in Philadelphia?
Well, that's interesting because I probably take a different approach than maybe some PR pros would. I always think
nudity.
No. No, I go back to the Jim Harbaugh line where, be yourself, everyone else is taken, right? Because I think authenticity matters. I think if you try to come off a certain way, like I thought in Nick's opening press conference, he tried to be something that he's, I think lean into yourself.
Lean all the way in, like pig's blood on the face, like Rambo, like come out just absolutely frothing at the mouth on the sideline.
No, I'm not saying that.
You dress like a caveman.
So there's obviously limits beyond that. You be yourself, right? But I would say that
call yourself the Thing.
I think so. This is interesting because people have different philosophies on this. I wouldn't be afraid to hold people publicly accountable. I think if your whole approach is accountability, I would bring that publicly too. I think your words. I don't believe in being the boy who cried wolf, right? So let's take the example of Nick's falling on the sword. In my opinion, with him saying like that call was mine or that call was mine. First off, I don't think it's a very effective strategy because like Vic Fangio's press conference tomorrow is going to be trying to figure out which play call Nick Sirianni had. So I don't know how much he thought that one through. As I said on the show yesterday, and as I wrote on Twitter, like him doing this thing where I just want you guys to know that failed play was on me, and I think he's going to be doing this all year. It comes off like you're taking accountability, but to me, it's like the boy who cried wolf.
It doesn't come off that way anymore.
Yeah. Right. It's like I'm Spartacus, and it's like who's actually Spartacus here, right?
Yeah, except it's so obviously fake that it belies the entire thing.
So So I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with saying, look, Jalen can't throw that interception here, right? Or that was that call didn't work out because this happened. We're gonna be better next time, right? Yeah. I think that accountability. If you talk so much about accountability, you're taking accountability, but also I don't have a problem holding people accountable. But to the spirit of the question, I would be yourself, but I would also think like, what am I trying to achieve with this, with how I'm doing this? And but I do believe authenticity matters, and it's kind of like what made it work for Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce didn't try to act like anyone else, and that's what I think coaches should do.
He also
more
understood the city a little bit better, I think.
Exactly.
A lot bit better. And let's take a step back now and go over to the football side here.
Wait. I just wanted.
You were trying to get us off of football. Okay.
Well, because we didn't address the kid part.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I don't think it's that big a deal. I wouldn't have done it if I were Nick. But he's done this before. Right, multiple times before in the past. He, Steph Curry's done this. Kobe Bryant's done this. Like this, Nick Sirianni's not the first person to do it. I see, and full disclosure, my friend and colleague Les Bowen, he has a good column up on allphly.com, and Mike Sielski from the Inquirer has a good column up, and like I respect where they're coming from. I disagree. I don't think Nick was using the kids as like a shield. The questions were I think Nick answered the questions the same as he would if they were there or not.
I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
I mean, he's asking his kids, "Do you think it was loud in there?" Like,
yeah.
And no, you think the exact questions are the same? I don't agree with that at all.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think the questions.
I think I agree that too much is being made of it,
Yeah.
probably, but I don't agree that it was the exact same press conference as if the kids weren't there.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I think it's fairly common, and I think press conferences in general are performative, and that's part of him performing, right? I mean, I would imagine a conversation with Nick, or I know this, a conversation with Nick is different than a press conference with Nick, and I think there's a performative element to it. Now, as far as why he does it, Nick explained it a bit yesterday. I've spoken to him about this in the past, just to kind of give the listeners and viewers some background here. Nick recognizes the fact that there are a lot of things that he misses, right, as being a head football coach, right? He is, from all indications, a loving and dedicated father, right? But the nature of the job is such that you're not there.
That's why I don't. I am sympathetic to that.
And then he also remembers growing up in Jamestown, New York, and being like he was around all the high school players, and he could tell you the Southwestern Central starting lineups probably the same. He could do that better than he can name like the Buffalo Bills starting lineups growing up, like that. Like so for him, like how cool is it?
Or how to put an opening drive script together,
or that. So for him, how cool is it that his kids get to experience this, and like he wants his kids to be a part of this. And you saw in the post game speech yesterday that the Eagles put out. The Eagles do a great job of giving behind the scenes content, and I should say their web and media team do that. I don't think that's like Nick doing that.
Certainly not.
Yeah. But Nick talks about family all the time, and so I think he wants his kids and his family to be a part of this. He mentioned A.J. Brown went to his son's baseball game, and like he wants his kids to experience this and to grow up with these types of memories. That said, I think there is. I think maybe you do it for the NFC Championship game. It doesn't have to be a random Sunday, but I can tell you, as someone who's sat there for just about every single Nick Sirianni press conference since he's been here, I didn't bat an eye. I wasn't like, oh God, I'm not going to ask about this topic. And I think Nick's performative after wins as it is.
Yeah, the dad stuff is why I don't really get upset about it. Okay. I am sympathetic to it, although as I said before,
and probably empathetic as well.
But I do think that it is disconnected from how he was at the end of that game. That's why to me it's a little bit silly. And I also think if we can pivot now to the football of it,
yes,
all of this is part of why I think, even though they won that game yesterday, I think I feel worse about the team.
Interesting,
because all of this to me lays bare like Nick is going back to sort of like his greatest hits.
Okay,
right? Like, oh, I got to get back to being crazy on the sideline. People liked it when I brought my kids up there. I got good feedback that I was able to like cover for guys publicly. Like, let me do that even more now. And this is a team that went into the bye having a lot of questions to answer. And instead of answering those questions, they came out and looked the exact same. The problems that they had, those opening drives, guess what? 3 and out on the first possession, no points in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Like the motion that we saw in week 1, static again.
100%.
An offense that looks like it is incredibly uncreative and is only relying on A.J. Brown winning 50-50 balls. That's the biggest change to the offense. And to me, what has been proven out now is that we keep thinking this is such a talented roster. Like if they could only just put it all together, what a team they could be. This is the upside. There are no answers coming. They had the bye week to get like back to it and figure out what they can do on offense. And this is what they came out with. It's incredibly dispiriting. And it reminds me of the end of last season where we kept being like, well, if only they could fix this or, fix the blitz. Like, yeah, they've actually gotten better against the blitz this year. But the upside that this is going to be a really good offense is not there. Zach, their best game this season, offensively by EPA per drive, 76th percentile for all games in the NFL for an offense this year. That's their best game. They haven't had one game in which they've been a top 20 percentile offense. You know how many they had in 2022? 5.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they've had 2 games with A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't lend
and one of them has been okay.
Yeah, and the other one, they scored 34 points, and because the quarterback turned it over 3 times, right? So, yeah, I mean, I push back on that to an extent. Where I agree with you is I expected far more.
This is who they are. There is no big thing coming.
Well, yeah. So, I really had an issue with Nick's answer about the slow starts because, like you say, you're going to fix it. The time to fix this was during these 2 weeks when you said these past 2 weeks when you said you were going to fix it, right? For them to come out 3 and out like they did, no points in the first quarter, really stalling those first 2 drives. To me, that's problematic because this was your chance. You had
the offense is still just relying on low percentage plays and hoping that our guy is better than your guy.
Yeah, and I understood. I said on the pregame show yesterday with Fran and Jamie when they said, "How do you think the Eagles are going to attack this Jim Schwartz defense?" And I said they're going to attack them vertically. They're going to look for one-on-ones on the outside against single high looks and have AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith try to win those one-on-ones. I thought this was a game where they were going to try to rely on explosives. And that was their game plan. And talking to players after, talking to DeVonta Smith after the game, for instance, he mentioned as much. And, A.J. Brown said that on the touchdown, he was just hoping there'd be man coverage. The tight end went in motion. He knew it was man. And he said, all right, here's the chance, right? And they scored a touchdown on it. But I agree with your general point. There needs to be a more imaginative offense than just our guys are going to beat your guys, because that was their approach last year. And you've heard Jason Kelce say in probably the most honest discussion about last year that there's 2 ways to go when you're struggling. You can simplify things, or you can try to like add more and do more. And their approach last year was to scale back, to simplify. Their approach on defense was to add. And so it was kind of like neither side worked. But their approach last year, as things weren't working, is our guys are going to beat your guys. And the reality is that after the way they played in 2022, teams spent a lot of time looking at the Eagles. They spent a lot of time looking at Jalen. They spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to stop them. And you need a counterpunch. And your counterpunch can't just be players, not plays, right? Your counterpunch also needs to be finding plays to maximize those players. And when you look at the spray charts, for instance, it's not a good indication of that. I know you have the stat on play action that I found fascinating.
Let's get into it because what for like the layman, everybody knows what is the easy button in NFL offense these days, right? The simplest thing, play action.
Yeah,
the Eagles ran 2 plays the entire game yesterday in play action. That's the fewest that they have done as far as the true media charting goes back, which is, I believe, to 2016. It's the second lowest of any team in a game this season. That's insane.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. It's a very...
They also ran the ball a lot more yesterday. Shouldn't that have set up the play action?
In theory, yeah. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
It tells the story of an offense that is disconnected.
Yeah.
That has too many cooks, which is exactly what we were worried about.
So let me ask you this. Do you think this is Kellen Moore calling? Because I do believe Kellen Moore's calling the plays. But as we've talked about on the show for a while now, there's a difference between play calling and play design. Do you think this is the Kellen Moore offense? Or do you think Kellen Moore's calling like a modified version of the Nick Sirianni offense?
I think it's probably more of the latter. I think it's the Kellen Siri Patullo offense. Mm-hmm. Like it's all of it's nobody's offense.
Is it the Jalen Hurts offense?
It's Jalen Hurts.
That's what I'm saying. Right. Is it the Jalen Hurts
part
offense?
Of it too. And the no balls over the middle of the field. It is hard to think that is not Jalen Hurts related.
Yeah.
And it's not like I was talking to Fran on the drive in. It's not like he was missing throws, that there were guys open over the middle of the field, but you would imagine they're putting the game plan together with that in mind. And maybe Jalen just likes throwing those balls on the outside. Maybe they thought that was a way to get away from the turnovers. I don't know. But, it's ugly.
Yeah, so Jalen, one of the things that really stood out during the summer is...
By the way, very quickly, I misspoke earlier. The 2022, they had 5 games in which they were in the top 10 league-wide and then 7 top 20, whereas this year they haven't had a single one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And look, as that sample size grows, I think we'll have a better indication of it, too.
I mean, how many more answers? How much more time do we need to give them?
Well, I think if
They
they
had
play,
a bye. They're playing a mediocre defense. They got A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith and Lane Johnson back, and it was still a very mediocre game for them.
no, I think if you play 2 games with A.J. Brown, I think you need a larger sample size than that to say.
How about we try to get A.J. Brown open instead of just relying on him winning a jump ball?
I'm on board with you there. And, A.J. Brown is so lethal on those slants. And if you look back in the practice notes, how many times did I write this play's automatic? Like sometimes I just wonder
17.
I just wonder in general, like, are they operating a different team in training camp than they are? Like are they so focused on like preserving the competitive advantage in training camp that
Right.
it's like we're just going to run this different thing. We're going to have a different middle linebacker and a different slot cornerback during training camp, but we're going to have this real big element of surprise. We're going to put this different offense out there in training camp. We're going to have this element of surprise during the season. Yeah, that play worked. That play was money in training camp. It was money in Tennessee with A.J. Brown. And you even see it when they throw it. He's so good at stopping, turning, and getting yards after the catch. I want to see more of A.J. Brown after the catch. He's so dynamic that way. It doesn't all have to be the vertical game to him. But, no, you are right in terms of the lack of creativity. And I keep going back to Jalen Hurts, and I understand that, look, there's 2 common denominators here. 3 if you include Kevin Patullo. But Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts has played with Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, and now Kellen Moore. If the ball's not going over the middle of the field, I think we have to look at the quarterback, number one. And
I think that's fair.
And then number 2, one of Jalen, and I was saying this before, one of Jalen Hurts' his points of emphasis during the offseason when he was talking about adjusting the new offenses is he says a big part of it is looking at the catalog of plays and figuring out the ones you like and kind of working with the coordinator to say, all right, this is what I do well. So you do wonder what input he gave Kellen Moore as far as like these are the concepts that I'm most comfortable with. These are the concepts that I'm best at. And I talked on Anthony's show about it today. I'm reading this book. I mentioned it last week. It's Michael Silver's book on the Shanahan coaching staff. But anyways, there's this summit that kind of happened, and Seth Wickersham did a great piece on this a few years ago when Matt Ryan going into year 2 in Atlanta with Kyle Shanahan, and they kind of had this meeting out in California in Tom House's house, or Tom House's home rather, and it was about like finding ways to maximize Matt Ryan within that offense. And you just wonder if how much of this is Jalen Hurts driven and how much of this, like, are they saying, Jalen, here's an offense that you're going to run and you're going to be good in it, trust us? Or is it Jalen Hurts saying, these are the concepts I want to run, I'm the franchise quarterback?
Well, it's a good question. Either or. You know who's got another one of those? One of our friends. Great taste, less filling. What do you got? Less filling, great taste. Well, a lot has changed over the years, and one thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite, and another that hasn't is that it remains less filling. So what is the best thing about the original light beer? You don't have to choose. Miller Lite sparked the debate in 1975, and we still haven't settled it. What's better than getting riled up with your buddies, crushing some Miller Lights, and yelling at your team's head coach, and just hoping that he's going to get you're going to get a reaction out of him? You never know. Sometimes, some places it works. Miller Lite keeps it simple. Undebatable quality, great taste, and only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer. Less filling and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. You don't have to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY birds. Or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces. Fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
I go to these circuit training classes on Tuesday and Thursday mornings.
Whoa, big flex.
But I always know that on Wednesday and Friday morning, I'm going to get out of bed and the first step, I'm going to feel it, right? I might feel it in the lower back. I might feel it in my joints. If your joints are aching, your back's out of whack, hands cramping, That doesn't all. My hands don't cramp, but if they did, I know where to turn. And that's Rothman. Rothman's got you. At Rothman Orthopedics, practicing specialized care has been their passion for over 50 years. Their mission is high-quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research. Research leading to new treatments and better outcomes. Each Rothman doc is laser-focused on their specialty. Hip, knee, spine, you name it. They have a team for each body part right in your backyard, so you can cross over the defense, drain those jump shots, and root for our teams like no other fans in the country. They're Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. Rothman's 200-plus fellowship-trained physicians specialize in specific areas of the body and multitude of orthopedic services, including, like I said, hip, knee, spine, shoulder, and elbow, foot and ankle, hand and wrist, sports medicine, physical medicine, and rehabilitation, orthopedic oncology, and trauma and fracture care. They also proudly serve dozens of communities across PA and New Jersey with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. For more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatment, and improving outcomes for the benefit of their patients. Rothman Orthopedics, specializing in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today.
Check out some of these super chats. We have a couple more. Lock City. Fans are being so soft. If you dish it, you have to take it too. Obviously, a drunk a-hole who was on him for 3 hours straight. No problem with guys tripping back. Nick putting the fan on blast was funny.
All right, that's a good perspective. Yeah. I always wonder, what would you do in that spot?
Which part?
If you had someone chirping at you for 3 hours, I think you would give it back to them.
Maybe. If I had a good game.
I mean, he won the game. Like, that's where you and I have this disconnect. He won. They won the football game. They did win the game. Well, they won the football game. They are 3-2.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
They won the football game. Am I saying it incorrectly?
It's not incorrectly. It's just differently.
Okay. I have an accent. Yeah.
I do think that we have a disconnect there. Okay. Because I don't think that Jeffrey Lurie's standard, the audience of one, is squeaking by a bad team.
There's no column in the standings for squeaking by a bad team.
No, but it's predictive, Zach. It tells you what kind of team you have.
I don't think squeaking by a bad team on October 13th.
They are a middle-of-the-road team that was built to be a Super Bowl contender. They are
agree. They're not playing championship level football right now.
This is a 9-win team.
They're not playing championship level football right now. I also know that the season evolves. It could go either way. I don't think the way you play on October 13th is predictive for how you're going to play on January 13th. That's my view. I think what you try to do early in the season is you try to stack wins. You try to put yourself in position where if you're playing good ball late in the year, maybe you have a bye, maybe you have home field, but that's what you're trying to do early in the year.
This team has as good a chance of getting a bye as they do of having a top 5 draft pick.
Well, I agree, and the Lions are awesome right now too. They're not going to get a bye, the Eagles. They're not going to be the number one team. But I'm saying what you're trying to do early in the year is stack wins. I don't come away from a game against the Cleveland if they won. I did it again. If they were the winning team yesterday, 45.
If they were victorious,
45-7, I wouldn't come on here today and be like, everyone book your tickets to New Orleans. I would say it's October 13th yesterday, October 14th today.
No, but Zach, we have so much evidence that point differential matters. These things are predictive about how good of a team it is. So, if they won
not a good
45-7 yesterday, we would feel a lot better. They would be a much better team.
They're a middling team right now. But I'm saying, they did win the game.
I know, he's puffing his chest after, they won that game for the only reason that they have A.J. Brown. That's why they won that game yesterday, because he comes down with 2 50-50 balls, right?
Yeah.
A.J. Brown does all the work, and then this guy over here is pounding his chest like he did the work.
Look, Brandon Graham has a great third down stop. There's other stuff going on there. But I see your point. It's not a chest pounding game. I agree with you there.
Yeah, but they won.
But they did win the game. They won. I just think winning matters. Winning, there's a scoreboard for a reason, and there are standings for a reason. That was not a loss yesterday. That was a win. I don't believe in moral victories. I don't believe in moral defeats. I believe in, or I screw that up. I don't believe a loss is a moral victory.
Yeah.
I don't believe a loss is a moral victory. I don't believe a win is like a loss. I believe there's a win and a loss.
I mean, I think there's room for both.
Okay, so all right, next super chat.
Well, next super chat from Jalen All Day Sicko Mad Day, who says, in the photo, BG and teammates are smiling about Nick exchange with the crowd. Is this unifying the team more? Ooh, a little bunker mentality, us against the world.
There's nothing that unites a team more than us against the world. And this was always Doug Peterson thrived in the nobody believes in us thing. And actually what hurt Doug was what people believed in you, you know?
The new normal.
It goes back to a line. I cited Jason Kelsey 3 times today. It probably shows how aware he was of the fan base. But he gave that line that when everyone in this city thinks we're going to be good, we end up being crappy. And when everyone thinks we're going to be crappy, we end up being good. He didn't say crappy, but you can fill in the blanks. Poopy, or you know what I mean. Yeah, I think that this is a team that is probably going to try to galvanize around the idea that everyone's against them. I don't think everyone's against them. I think a lot of people are against Nick right now, but I don't think everyone. No, you could do a win it for Nick thing, but ultimately, I think that stuff helps you in a game. I don't think that stuff helps you in a season. Eventually, if the Eagles win enough games, everyone's going to believe in them. So you got to learn how to win without that button, you know. And I actually thought, by and large, yesterday in the locker room, and I wrote this. This was not a locker room that was like, I was like, oh, we told you so. Now, Brandon Graham did his thing where he came off the field saying, "What are you going to say about us now?" or something like that. And Brandon Graham's done that for 15 years.
When you get to game 200, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah. But in the locker room after the game, I actually found it to be a very self-aware team, right? I mean, they talked about winning ugly. You know, Lane Johnson said they need to score more points. They called it a constipated offense, right? So I found across the locker room that was not a team that was pounding its chest. The coach was, but I didn't think the team was.
Well, do you think that gets to the heart of the matter? Like, is there a disconnect between the players and the coach in terms of their personalities?
I think there's a disconnect between the quarterback and the coach in terms of the personalities. Well, sure. So we know that. But no, look, I think that was, for whatever reason, that was an emotionally charged game for Nick. I don't know if Nick, like, I mean, I don't want to be like a hot taker here. I don't know if Nick thought he was coaching for his job, or if Nick thought like that if they lost, he'd be in a bad spot. But there was something yesterday that triggered Nick. And look, as I said before, Nick's human. We're all human. There are times when I come into a show and I'm probably a little more like I try to be even keeled, but maybe I'm on edge more than I would like to be. Right? That's the nature of it. There was something on that game that put him on edge, and that he felt he needed to act that way afterwards.
Can I be completely irresponsible speculation?
Yes.
This is completely unreported. But we talked about, I mean, last week was the bye.
Yeah.
That would have been the time when Nick and Jeffrey probably would have had a sit down, right, without having to have the demands of weekly game planning. It's possible that those conversations could have informed his demeanor. Sure.
You know, just like, there was an idea that Robert Saleh felt he had to win that game in London, right? So yeah, I don't think Jeffrey would have fired Nick yesterday if they lost, or fire Nick today had they lost. But I will say there were enough messages, and certainly messages that I got from people saying, "Do you think Nick's gonna survive this?" That kind of thing, and then the crowd saying "fire Nick." That this is not like something that is coming out of nowhere. People are speculating this, and that so Nick does feel the heat for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so with 6 minutes left in the program, let's talk about what could be the important ramifications injury-wise for the Eagles, as Dallas Goedert, Jordan Mailata, and Darius Slay all leave this game and do not return. It's obviously early. We don't have reporting on it, but if these injuries are serious, what do you think are the Eagles' plans moving forward?
Yeah, Jordan Mailata was on crutches yesterday, and I think that was the most concerning one because he left the field on a cart. The other guys walked off. I'm not saying that walking off says you're okay, but Jordan Mailata is the one that I'd be concerned about, and he's such an important player. It would be Fred Johnson at left tackle next week, presumably, if Jordan Mailata doesn't play. Now, the
I think it's possible. It would be Fred Johnson.
Yeah.
I think it's possible that he would have a relatively short leash.
With Tyler Steen.
Not in game.
Yeah.
But I think if he had a bad game,
Yeah.
that they might be willing to then, if it was an extended absence from Mailata, then be willing to
With
try Steen. Yeah.
I think Fred's more comfortable on the left side than the right. But that Giants pass rush is menacing. Now I know Kayvon Thibodeau is on the IR, but you saw a guy you were real high on coming out, Azeez Ojulari, had a big game yesterday. Brian Burns, we are both really high on. He had a big game. Dexter Lawrence in the middle there.
Best players in football.
Yeah, so that's a really tough matchup for the Eagles front. Playing with the backup tackle would be a concern here. So that's an important injury to monitor. We'll speak to Nick Sirianni in about 20 minutes. I can't imagine he's going to give us injury updates, but I will try for sure. And then Dallas Goedert. Yeah, you and I both remarked yesterday, like when Goedert went down, they just did like a 1-for-1 swap, and they were playing Jack Stoll in the slot. Didn't make any sense. I would hope for the Eagles' sake that
they played a ton of 12 personnel yesterday.
That if Goedert is out of the lineup, that they respond accordingly. Maybe not play so much 12. Although, people in the locker room like the way Calcaterra played. I actually thought,
I thought so too.
If you listen back to AJ Brown's comment, AJ Brown's so honest. AJ Brown's like, no one's worried about Grant, so he has to take advantage of the fact that all the attention is on DeVonta and me.
Well,
and
that's
he did
good.
That.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they used that in the offense more.
Yeah. So it would be Grant Calcaterra there.
You could say the same about Jahan Dotson.
Yeah. Maybe CJ Uzomah gets a practice squad call up in that case. So we will monitor that. And then Darius Slay, I saw Darius Slay walking off. I saw him walking in the corridor. We'll see the status there. I don't believe that to be a long-term injury, but the Eagles do have depth. You saw Isaiah Rodgers go in first yesterday, then Keely Ringo. My guess is it would be Isaiah Rodgers if Keely doesn't play. But that we need to monitor Malik Neighbors. He's missed 2 weeks for the Giants because of a concussion. That passing game is certainly not the same without him.
Certainly not. Yeah, you saw that. Although if he comes back, I think this could be a frisky game for the Eagles. I think they open as 4-point favorites.
Yeah, the Giants. They have a quarterback issue too, but when I say two, I'm referring to the Browns, not the Eagles. They lost Andrew Thomas is getting an MRI today. We'll see. That's a big injury, but that defense has players, especially that defensive front, and Jalen Hurts against pressure. We'll see how he responds.
Super chat from Jack, who has the beat on what Zach's headline writing would have us describe as the game yesterday. Eagles win.
Jack, did Bo put you up to that? Yeah. I write my own headlines for allphly.com, so you can literally see what my headline was yesterday, which, by the way, make sure you're a diehard and check our stuff out. Man, I'm getting messages here from people watching the show. Terrible takes on Nick. I'm texting Emily right now to tell her how poor you're doing on the show. Thanks, Sean. Eagles 20, Browns 16. Stars excel. Slow starts linger.
What is Sean's beef?
I haven't read all the text, but probably that he probably thinks people think I'm being too sympathetic to Nick in general. You seem to agree.
I mean,
Bo is dominating. That's what it says. Bo is dominating. Saying this in real time. Yes.
Now, what you have to do is you have to respond to that by yelling and saying "F you."
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't dare. I'll say, how can I get better?
That's actually what Nick was yelling at the fans.
Yeah.
How can I get better? Tell me.
What would you like to see me do?
better?
But yeah, the headline I wrote from yesterday's game is on all PHLY. Stars excel, slow start lingers.
No, it's not. It's Eagles 20, Browns 16. That's what you started with.
Stars excel, slow starts linger, defense limits. I do that for SEO. Defense limits points, special team struggle, and what's up with Nick Sirianni? Those are the 5 topics.
You got to put nudity in there if you want to really get the SEO going.
Yeah, I'm not going for cheap hits.
I mean, you are.
Good with people, Eagles, Browns, right?
Yeah.
So true.
Okay. All right. Make sure that you do become a diehard so you can read that article and also all the other articles on the site. Les Bowen with the column and Fran Duffy's analysis of the offense coming later tonight. the defense coming tomorrow, and then we'll have Fran in studio for tomorrow's show at 2 o'clock. So we look forward to that. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you to Brenna for making it happen behind the scenes. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.